We pick up with our look at the third urban revolution by examining our second characteristic, megacities. At the end of part two of our discussion, we examined the first characteristic, which was the rapid pace of change. Again, our cities in the third urban revolution are driven by economic integration, industrialization, and mass migration of people moving from rural areas to our cities. So that rapid change that we looked at with you in Dubai reflect that characteristic. Our second looks at the mere size of our cities in this third revolution, and we use this classification known as megacities. Megacities look at this modern growth, and they're recognizing that our cities today are much larger than they were in the past. The term megacity itself describes a city of 10 million or more people. In 1900, we didn't have any cities with 10 million or more people. But we've seen over the last 120 years or so a change in that classification, changing the numbers that fall into this designation. By 1950, we had two megacities, two cities with 10 million or more people. Today, we have over 30 megacities. This decade, we see over 30 megacities. And again, these megacities are found around the world, but we're seeing an increasing concentration of them in South Asia and East Asia, in the Korean Peninsula, Japan, China, and India. We see some of these megacities also in Latin America. We find them in North America, Africa, and Western Europe. So they're all over the world. But where our cities are growing the fastest, where the change is occurring the most rapidly, again, primarily in Asia and Africa, we're seeing the number of megacities grow quickly. While the growth of megacities reflects opportunity on one hand, because people are moving from rural areas into these cities for economic prospects, we do see some concerns. One is the environmental toll. So when we see a mass growth occurring, again, within decades, not hundreds of years, but within decades, when we see this rapid growth, there are certainly environmental effects. We generally do not have the ability to accommodate 1,000% population growths or more over 20, 30 years. So the environment takes a hit, and some of the environmental degradation may not be sustainable. We also see the concern with primate city status, meaning that some of these megacities create that concept of cumulative causation, where growth begets growth, where the growth in a primate city, in a megacity, means great prosperity and great opportunity for that place, but it could serve as a drain. It could attract all the talent, all the resources, and all the investment from other parts of the country. So while megacities, again, reflect economic integration, opportunity, and social transformation, there are some concerns with the size, and especially the pace of the expansion of these megacities. The map on your screen now shows our global population and our concentration of megacities. And you see that most of our megacities are found in Asia. And again, they're spread out North America, Latin America, Asia. And by 2030, we're going to see more megacities, more of our biggest cities appear in our developing countries. You'll notice on the right, Dhaka, Bangladesh, Karachi, Pakistan, Cairo, Egypt, Lagos, Nigeria. All of these rapidly growing cities are found in what we refer to as developing countries. Our third characteristic is metropolitanization. And metropolitanization looks at the increased connections between cities. Again, a highlight of this third revolution is that increased integration of our urban areas. And we recognize this not only across the world, but also within local clusters, within countries. So while the United States is more connected with Dhaka, Bangladesh than ever before, we're also seeing connections across our national cities increase. We recognize that transportation is a big reason why this metropolitanization characteristic is growing. Think about how quickly we could get between Baltimore and New York, or Baltimore and Boston, where we have highway, rail, and frequent air connections. So transportation is no longer a hurdle, or it's not a hurdle like it was in the past. We see that our population is increasingly connected, meaning that the transportation is in place and people are more transient. So they may move to different metro areas within this agglomeration. We also see that people work and live in different metropolitan areas. It's very common for somebody to live in the Baltimore metropolitan area and work in DC, or live in the DC metro area and work in Baltimore. So our population is moving between metro areas more than ever before. And our economic activities are increasingly integrated. So rather than having our Washington economy, our Baltimore economy, our Philadelphia economy, our New York economy, we're seeing the merger and the integration of these different cities into one massive metropolitan area. And this massive metropolitan area is known as a megalopolis, with these urban and economic connections. Political boundaries like state lines matter less, and these, again, economic connections matter more. So the megalopolis that's found between Washington and Boston is becoming increasingly integrated. And as you can see here, state lines matter little, county and town lines matter little. What matters are the economic connections, and transportation makes this possible. In Southeast Asia, we see the Pearl River Delta. This megapolitan area is growing again at a rapid pace. The Pearl River Delta is significantly larger than the megalopolis area in the Northeast US. Here's the countryside of Shenzhen in the early 1980s. This area is found in the Pearl River Delta in South China. In 1980, 58,000 people lived here. By 2015, this area transformed. In 35 years, we went from 58,000 people to 10.7 million people. This area has a major road that goes into it, known as the Shannon Road. This is the Shannon Road in 1985, a few years into the early growth of this area. Here's the same road today. So we recognize that our metropolitan areas are becoming increasingly integrated. So the Pearl River Delta, where you have a number of cities, over 5 million people, highlighted here by Shenzhen, is becoming increasingly integrated, working increasingly as one economic force. Our fourth characteristic is what's known as sprawl, or urban sprawl. Sprawl simply means to spread out. And here's an image of the Charlotte metro area. And Charlotte is found at the center of that beltway, center of that highway loop in the middle of the map. And you recognize, based on the colors, that the areas outside the beltway are those that are growing the fastest. Now, sprawl has been an issue in our more developed countries since the 1950s. After World War II, the United States invested heavily in suburbanization. What we're seeing now, over the last 30 years or so, is that urban sprawl is also occurring in our developing countries. Now, sprawl occurs for a number of reasons. One, it is generally less expensive the farther you go from a city. So you could buy a bigger house. You could buy a house with better amenities or a bigger yard farther from the city. We also see that, again, we are investing heavily in highways. So highways make areas accessible that were previously inaccessible. So as you head out of Charlotte, you could see how the areas in darker orange are clustered along these major roadways, like Interstate 77, Interstate 85, State Route or US Route 74. Now, sprawl reflects demand. It reflects what people want. If people didn't want more space, less density, newer amenities, newer communities, then it wouldn't happen. So it does reflect consumer demand. But there are concerns with this. One of them is sustainability. How far can we go and still be connected to our cities? How far can we go and still make the commute time worth it? Sustainability looks at environmental factors like clearing forests and farms to put in roads and to put in developments. Sustainability also looks at quality of life measures, where Charlotte is increasingly looking like Atlanta as far as a metro area goes, where average commute times could be a couple hours each way to and from work. So as sprawl becomes more of a factor, we are looking at issues with environmental sustainability, again, because we're clearing out green space, we're clearing out natural areas, and we're paving it over, building houses. And we're also looking at human sustainability. How will these longer commutes, these increasing distances from home and work, affect us as people? And we see higher incidence of obesity, we see higher incidence of mental health concerns that are associated with increasing sprawl. So these are the first four characteristics. In our next segment, we will look at our fifth characteristic, which is slums, which is a really important topic when we look at rapid growth, particularly in our developing countries. In our fifth characteristic, slums, we'll look at the rapid rural to urban migration and how this stresses the formal markets, the formal housing market, the formal job market. But we'll leave off with urban sprawl for here, and in our next segment, our next meeting, we'll pick up with number 5, slums.